My table here in front of me looks a little bit messy, but that's because I wanted to get out all of my tools so we can talk a little bit about equipment that you need in order to make soap. So I've been making soap by hand for about 8 years now, and in that time I've learned a few things that can make your life a little bit easier. So let's walk through what I use in order to make soap. Stainless steel mixing bowls that are heat safe. I set these directly on top of my stove in order to heat my oil solutions. So this is an invaluable thing, and it saves you a step and some dishes in the cleanup. So this is good. And it's good to have these in a variety of sizes. The next thing you'll want in a variety of sizes are Pyrex or tempered glass containers. These are great for mixing your lye and your water solution, for measuring out your oils, and any other elements you'll be using in your soap recipe. Right underneath, you'll see that I have a scale. Now this scale measures in ounces and in grams. This is typically what you will find a soap recipe formulated in with regard to measurements. So a scale is good. When it comes to soap, yes, there is definitely an artistic component, but it's also a science, and we want to make sure that we are using as precise of measurements as possible. A thermometer. Now for years I used a meat thermometer, and it would give me a very good reading, but it was very hard to squint and see all those little tick lines. I recommend a digital thermometer. A digital thermometer works by simply shining the infrared light onto your solution, and it gives you a read of the temperature right here. It's exact and precise and incredibly quick. What else do I use? Ramekins. Mine's a little stained from a lot of use, especially with some activated charcoal, but that's okay. You can use these to measure out any colorants or pigments, any additives like dried florals or textures that you'll be adding to your soap. Cooking utensils such as spoons and spatulas are so important when it comes to soap making. The reason that we want to have our own separate tools for creating soap is because traces of lye or our soap solution could work its way into cracks and nicks that we might not even notice in our dishes. So rather than eating off of lye spoons, we're going to go ahead and have a set of utensils specifically dedicated to soap making. So I use several heat-safe spoons, and I also use a wooden spatula. You could use bamboo, you could use plastic or silicone. My biggest recommendation is just having something that is solely dedicated towards making soap. The last tool that I want to show you is a big one. That is an Immersion stick blender. The first time that I made soap, it took me 2.5 hours, no exaggeration, to stir my first batch and get it to come to a trace. A trace is the point in soap making where we can finally add any ingredients such as dried florals, pigments, colorants, fragrances, and to do that for 2.5 hours by hand with a whisk, that's tiring. So I highly recommend a stick blender. It's a more consistent blending tool for your soap batch, and also it only takes 2 minutes, so definitely go this route. I have showed you my tools. I'm going to move on to some safety items here. We will talk about the effects of lye on your skin and that sort of thing in just a moment, but it is very important to recognize that lye is a caustic substance. So because it does pose some threat to our safety, it's always good to wear rubber gloves when working with soap. Now, any pair of rubber gloves will do. These are just purple dish gloves that I found at my grocery store. I also recommend long sleeves to try to cover as much skin of the arm as possible. And safety glasses. Very stylish, but it is something that is going to protect our eyes should we get any splatter. We don't want any blindness from home soap making. Now, let's move on and talk about how to safely handle lye in our kitchen for soap making.